All right.
There it goes. It says uploading recordings now.
Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of 49 Volts. I am your host, Josh, and Chuck and I have had a little practice. So he kind of knew the song a little bit, you know, did a little pre-work on this week's episode, but honored to have you, Chuck. Very well-known person over in the structured cabling ICT world. Huge following, a lot of education. So obviously we have an audience here that is for all the low voltage, and we have a lot of security people in the audience as well. So for anybody that maybe doesn't know you already, give them a quick intro about who you are, Chuck.
Sure. But first I got to tell you, love that intro music.
Thank you.
That's like headband. I like it. Pay attention. Love it. Love it. So for those who don't know me, my name is Chuck Bowser. I am a RCDD, a registered communications distribution designer. I'm a Bixby technician. I'm also a former certified Bixby trainer. I've been in the industry for over 40 years. I started in 1982. And like most other people, I just kind of like fell into this industry. So I've got lots of experience. I started like everybody else, started off as an apprentice, the guy who got sent out to the truck to get the bucket of dial tone. And worked my way up. I've held positions from installer, technician, project manager, estimator, area manager, quality control, training. I've done lots and lots and lots of things. I'm not a subject matter expert. I hate when people call me expert, but I've got lots and lots of experience that I'm willing to share with people. And that's kind of the whole genesis of the podcast. If you want to know more about structured cabling, just look me up, and I might be talking about copper cabling one day, or career path the next day, or certifications the day after that. So the podcast has been going now for just a little over 4 years, and we just hit almost 500,000 views on YouTube. We've got over 15,000 followers across all the different platforms. This month, I had 133,000 views across all my platforms, which is only half of what I did last month. Last month I was at 250,000. This month took a huge hit because of the hurricane, because I literally stopped creating content for like 2.5 weeks. And obviously it had an impact on my views and all that other kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm here for the long run to help people become smarter and, you know, educated and enriched.
No, we appreciate that. So let's pretend that I was in the structured cabling world for a little over 20 years. And for the last 10, I've been in the security world, maybe more than hypothetical. So what have I missed over the last decade? You know, what is new over there in the structured cabling world that I might have missed?
Right. So the low voltage industry, a lot of people have this big misnomer about low voltage. Low voltage can be anything from pulling and terminating structured cabling for voice and data. It could be installing KSUs, PBXs, phone switches. It could be installing AV systems, security, access control, you know, power over Ethernet. The analogy I like to use is, think of the low voltage industry as a bicycle. When you look at it, it's one unit, but when you tear it apart to its components, there's a lot of different things going on there. And that's the low voltage industry. So there's a lot of things that changes, and a lot of the things are interconnected. One of the biggest things is the explosion of connected devices. And by that, what I mean, look at the IoT, Internet of Things. You know, I told you, I live in Central Florida. We just lived through 2 hurricanes. And one of the things I learned from living in Florida is to be prepared for hurricanes. So we have backups, and we have backups to our backups. So my internet went down. It's been down for almost 10 days now. They can't come out and fix it because where a tree fell on the cable is currently under 5 feet of water. So they don't want to drive their trucks in there to fix that cable for obvious reasons. But don't worry, I got a backup. I got cellular data as a backup, right? Well, guess what? Everybody and their brother in my neighborhood is using cellular data right now. And you get it's shared bandwidth. So it's choppy and it works kind of funky. So I had to go get out another internet, Starlink. right? Starlink. So we got Starlink. I'm hooking it up literally just like yesterday because it's hard to find the equipment because they're all sold out. And when I'm hooking up the router to the antenna stuff and I'm creating the network, I didn't realize how many things I actually have on the network in my house. And if you'd asked me to take a guess, I would have said, I don't know, 3, 4. But just, I got my personal computer, my work computer, my phone, my work phone. There's 4 devices and I haven't even left me yet, right? Obviously, my wife has 3 devices. She's got the exact same things, but she doesn't have a company cell phone. We've got a Nest a Nest thermostat that's connected to the internet. We've got security cameras that are connected so we can monitor and look at our camera feeds via the internet. All those are devices, and all of those are going to require cabling. Okay, that's one thing. Then when you couple with that, the higher demand for data rates. Now, when you start talking, there was a time when 10 megabit it used to be the cat's meow. Yeah, good luck in even trying to find a 10 megabit device nowadays, right?
Right.
So now you're talking usually 100 megabit. But we have networks that can do 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig over copper. 40 gig. And that's because the bandwidth monster is grown. Because people are like you and I were talking at the tail end of the rehearsal show,
right?
About how we like to watch.
Where I forgot to hit record.
Yeah. We like to watch. Don't worry, I've done that myself. We like to watch YouTube videos. Well, if I'm watching YouTube and my wife's trying to have a live stream or a remote business call, that's a lot of bandwidth. So you're going to see Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a. If you're doing work in Europe, Cat 7, Cat 7a, Cat 8 cabling that can be installed. And the way that you install, handle, terminate, test Cat 8 cable is totally different than Cat 5e cable. Okay. Then we start talking about the Internet of Things. Start thinking about the convergence of all the different types of networks, especially when we start getting in commercial environments. You got PoE lighting, you got security, you got HVAC systems, and they're all being integrated over IP. And that's going to make it essential for the low voltage installer to have a broader understanding of all this stuff and how they interact with each other. And then, of course, like our industry, like always, the industry always moves faster than the codes and the standards do. So what happens is we drag the standards following along with us. So we got to update our standards. And so there's organizations out there like Bixby and ANSI and a couple of others that drive the standards organization. Matter of fact, I've got one of my current read right now is the ANSI Bixby 008 2024 Wireless Local Area Network Standard that I'm currently reading through now because I'm a constant learner. You got to always be learning in our industry. So people volunteer to get on those committees to help do that. So right now is the perfect opportunity. Like there's this thing called the PoE Consortium right now. They're trying to write best practice stuff for PoE, and they are ground level. So if you get PoE interest, you can join that organization and you can help shape what the PoE industry is going to look like in 10 years or 5 years. For as far as training and accepted practices and best practice, there's lots of great things. And then you talking about all that, you can't forget about smart buildings, right? Smart buildings and how smart buildings are using all different kinds of technology to give centralized control to the building owner so they can, maximize or minimize the resources they need to use, maximize the amount of stuff they're putting back out in the environment, making buildings. It's almost become the network has almost become the third utility where, how many times have you gone into a place and said, well, what's the wireless password? You automatically assume they have a network. You automatically assume they have wireless. Right. That's smart buildings, and all those systems are tied together. Occupancy sensors to turn on and off lights, on and off HVAC systems. Again, not a lot of businesses are moving to what's called BYOD, bring your own device. So now they got to create networks that can work with Macs and PCs and tablets and cell phones and stuff. This is an exciting time, an absolute exciting time to be in the low voltage industry.
No question. So And you talked about that continuous learning. I think that's going to be part of the answer to this. But, I remember back, spending a lot of my years in management and project management when I dealt with cabling. And one of the hardest questions, and it always meant a lot to me, was, you'd have these folks would start out, and, you can really advance quickly at first in the cabling industry. So you can start off as a helper. And if you're pretty smart and you work hard and you got some good mentors around you that help you learn, within a year, you can be a lead and be growing. And that's pretty exciting, but then it can kind of plateau on you. And then the question becomes, well, how do I get into your spot? Or how do I get into running projects? Or how do I move up in this industry? What kind of advice or thoughts do you have to help some of these, technicians and installers to try and grow their careers?
So the first thing I would say is there's two types of people in this world, right? And those two types of people are people who treat their job as a career and people who treat their jobs as a job. Okay. Treat it as a career, invest in it. And there's lots of different things you can do here. Number one, continuous learning. You heard me say it already. I'm a continuous learner, but you're probably thinking, but Chuck, you're already at the pinnacle of your career. You already know everything. No, I don't. That's why I'm reading things, and learning things, because I understand our industry changes at the speed of light. And that's not that's just how it is. And you've got to invest in it all the time. And there's ways you can do it that don't cost you money, and there's ways that you can do it that does cost you money. So don't let that ever be a hindrance. Well, I don't have the money to go, get, some education, right? You don't need that. Don't get me wrong. There are some options there, but you don't need to. There's a lot, for example, Cable Installation and Maintenance Magazine. It is free. All you got to do is sign up for it. Go to cablinginstall.com and subscribe to the magazine. It's free. And it talks about the latest codes, the latest standards, latest best practices. My favorite part of that magazine, Josh, is the very back, because that's where the bills are. Right, because who doesn't like having the latest and greatest tools, right?
There you go.
A lot of people in our industry, let's admit it, we are very tool hungry, but you got to pursue knowledge too, right? Cable Installation and Maintenance Magazine is a free resource. They also do, I believe, 2 free webinars every month. Free webinars, free training. How many times have you heard those two words together, Josh? Probably.
Not often enough.
Right? Not often enough. Exactly right. Now, if you are fortunate enough to go the paid route, there's lots of great paid training out there. You can't have this conversation without talking about Big C, Building Industry Consulting Service International. They have training programs that teach it to the person who has absolutely zero experience to bring them into the industry, to work the way up to installer copper, installer fiber technician. They've got RCDD prep programs and training data centers. There's lots and lots of great information there. And then but they're not the only ones out there. There's the FOA, the Fiber Optic Association. There is a little bit of a difference between Big C and FOA. Big C is more focused on commercial buildings kind of stuff. FOA does that, but they also do a lot of like cable TV, fiber optic cabling and stuff like that, which Big C does a tiny bit of, but FOA does that a little bit better. But you can go, they got free training. Look up FiberU, FIBER, the letter U.org. There's a free fiber class. There's also a great 2-hour class on the internet, on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in free 2-hour fiber training course. You'll find a 2-hour video made by FIS, Fiber Instrument and Sales. Say people who make this. Yeah. There's a guy who teaches. His name is John Bruno. Fantastic instructor. And it didn't cost you a penny to watch that. That's the cool thing, right? So be a continuous learner. Understand that because our industry changes so fast, the most dangerous person to me is the person who says they know everything or they can't learn anything else because they already know everything. That's the most dangerous person. Knowledge is weird, right? Because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, right? You also have to be able to, and you also have to be able to.
It's the opposite of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
The what effect?
The Dunning-Kruger effect is the fact that those who know the least always think they know the most. That's a real big one over
Explain that one to me, because I've never heard that one.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially the idea that the people who know the least profess the most knowledge, and the more you know, the less you profess that. You have more awareness, essentially. So over in the software world, I used to call myself Dunning-Kruger, or say armed with my Dunning and Kruger approach. So I mean, it's just absolutely what you're saying. I mean, it's the opposite of that effect. Is actually that the more you know, the more you're aware that there's more out there that you don't know, and that you almost can never, you really can never know everything.
Yes.
Especially in technology these days.
Yes. And to quote Sylvester Stallone, I'm not a Sylvester Stallone fan. I mean, he's an actor. I don't care from one way or the other, but he said in Tulsa, he said, be careful of the quiet ones.
Nope.
Yeah, be careful of the quiet ones, because the people who are off that they know everything are the ones who are dangerous, that don't really know what they're talking about, right? So so on top of that, be willing and able to embrace new tech, be early adopters, because look at all the new stuff coming down the pipe, right? PoE, Power over Ethernet. We're using that they're using PoE. There's a place called the Sinclair Hotel. I think it's in Texas. And almost everything in that building is run over PoE, including, it's a hotel, including the hair dryers done over PoE. That's cool. 5G, Internet of Things, all that stuff. All that stuff is going to require you to be able to learn and grow and pick up new skills. And those aren't the only skills that you're going to need. You also need to, and this is where a lot of people fall. You need to have good soft skills. And I got to admit, when I first got in this industry, I wasn't really good at soft skills until I had somebody mentor me, and they taught me how to do. I mean, this guy was so great. I watched him one time. We went and met with a customer that he never met before, and he had a conversation with this customer just like they'd known each other for 10 years. And I said to him, "I thought you said you didn't know this guy." He goes, "I didn't." I said, "But you talked to him like you guys engage in." I said, "I wouldn't be able to do that." He goes, "It's all about reading cues. If I see you at a Vixie conference and you're wearing a Harley Davidson shirt, there's something I can talk to you about." Right? If I see you wearing Vans tennis shoes, there's something I can talk to you about. Right? So learn the soft skills, learn how to communicate. It's funny, we work in the communications industry. What do we suck at? Communicating, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. And I have a list of 147 pro tips on my website. Pro tip number 2 is communicate. Whether you are a project manager communicating to the crew, or you're the crew communicating to the project manager, because as a project manager, how many times have you heard the crew say, when you ask them, "Hey, are you done yet?" And they say, "Yeah, but," well, then you're not done yet. Right? If you put that word "but" in there, words have meanings. Choose the right words. Don't be afraid. My dad always told me, if you tell the truth, you don't have to ever worry about remembering what you said, because it's the truth, right? So
easiest to remember.
It's the easiest to remember, right? A lot of people. I tell people I don't lie, because it's not because of some moral conflict. It's because I've got a bad memory. I can't remember what I told Josh today and somebody else, tomorrow. I have a bad memory, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be brutal with the truth. If you ask me a question like, "Hey, Chuck, what color is your underwear?" I'm going to ask you, "Well, why do you seek that information?" Right? I'm not, you have to kind of be able to balance it. So soft skills, and it's really critical in our industry, because, again, whether you're talking to crews or talking to people in the office, talking to customers, if you want to aim for any type of leadership role. And a lot of people, when I say leadership, they think project manager or CEO. Do you realize the crew lead is a leader? And the crew lead may literally only have a year's worth of experience. So start practicing your soft skills as early as you can. And then the biggest tip I can give you for being able to grow your career is to network and find mentorship. Now, networking, there's lots of opportunities out there. The Big C does 2 conferences every year. If you don't want to spend the several $100s to go to those, they do regional ones. And sometimes even distributors like Graybar, Annixter, they do regional meetups. Even some of the manufacturers will do this too. Sometimes the manufacturer will go to a local gray bar, and then they'll do a meet and greet, and they'll do like a counter day or something where you can come in, you can talk to somebody who works directly for the manufacturer. What great way to practice your soft skills. If you have a problem with a certain manufacturer's cable or connectivity product, why not go to that network meeting and say, hey, you know that XYZ jack? I have a really hard time getting that thing in a wireless access point. It's too big. Trust me, that person is going to value that conversation. So you can practice your networking skills on that. And then also don't forget to mentorship. There's some formal mentoring programs out there. Bixie has a mentoring program. It's a 1 year membership, a 1 year program where you submit your application, you tell them what skills you want to learn. They match you up with a mentor who has those same skills. But you don't have to be in a formal program. You can find the person that has the position that you want. I can caveat this. Find the person who has the position that you want that's doing a great job.
Right.
I forgot to mention that in the first version of this. Because you don't want to have somebody that got the position you want that sucks at that position. You don't want to learn their bad skills. You want to learn somebody who's very successful at the position that you want. So there's a reason why we had to do a retake on this, right? And then just ask them, hey, I aspire to be an estimator one day. Would you mind, like once a week, maybe if I come in maybe on my lunch break and you mentor me and we just talk for an hour, maybe help me, give me some suggestions, ideas, and things to do so I can grow into that? The vast majority of people will absolutely jump at that because. And I just released a TikTok video on this. I was talking to somebody who's on the Women in Bixie committee. And we were talking about mentorship. And she said, I totally forgot that she said this till just this. And she said in it that there's mutual benefits to being a mentee and a mentor. Because as a mentor, you're being challenged. It's forcing you. I've been a mentor for, the last 10, 12 years. For various people throughout the industry. And sometimes they ask me questions I don't know the answer to, and I got to go research it. So it makes me a better person, right? So don't be afraid to ask someone to mentor you because, my dad always used to say, always make sure that you learn lessons from somebody else's mistakes.
Right. And I've learned plenty from my own and others as well. So that's...
Yep.
Something I would add to this too, a couple things from my experience. One is, we look at like athletes, my kids play sports and you can kind of see in their playing style and how they practice, like they have a role model, so if your kid wants to be a great running back and he likes the Giants, well, he used to like Saquon Barkley, who's now an Eagle. He doesn't like him anymore, but, start to see some of those people that maybe you perceive as being above you in the depth chart as more of a role model to aspire to than a roadblock and try to learn from them and try to use some of that energy in a positive way. And also understand the networking thing helps you as you grow your career. So as you become capable and ready to be a project manager, estimator, ops manager, whatever your goal is, the more people like these jobs a lot of times don't really hit the street. Right. I mean, a lot of the jobs I've had were because I knew people, they knew me, and one thing leads to another, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and that opening finds you. So that network, it's great for asking questions when you run into weird problems. It's great to just learn and sort of enriches your career experience, but also that's your best way to find a job. Is having that network of people and, just make sure you put as much into the kitty as you take out. Right. Yeah. And if you're a good contributor, you can receive many good things. And the last thing that I would point out too, since we had a practice session and I thought about, one of the other things too is, when you move into the office, as they say, you're more in a business environment now versus when you're just out in the field. And how often do we see somebody buys a cabling business and they know nothing about it and the struggles that they have. But what they do have is they have that business knowledge, and some of those soft skills can come with that, but also just understanding how do you use the Microsoft tools, Office, Word, how do you put together a document? How do you make sure that you're balancing a budget? A lot of those same business rules apply, to managing a project and to running an operation. So, there's a platform I use. I spend, it costs me like $500 a year, but I belong to Coursera, and Coursera is a education platform that's basically tied to the university industry. And there's a lot of college credit courses you can take, but it's all the big name universities, and there's a lot of different courses you can take, from marketing to computer science, AI. I took a program from Duke University on AI, and actually had to build models and do things that I never thought I would ever have to do, but I know a whole lot more about AI because of it. So you'll get out of this what you put into it, right? I think that's one of the big things. So if you make an investment in yourself to learn and grow, you can make yourself very valuable, and good things will happen. So wanted to add that since we had a good practice session. So when I first became aware of the RCDD was actually from a mutual friend of ours, Jim Martin. And, my dad went through that program in the 90s as well. And back then, I remember Bixie they would mail you a box of brochures that you could hand to your customer to explain what is an RCDD and why should they care. I've noticed, I went the PMP route, which is different. That's project management versus, RCDD is more design. But, everywhere I go now, people know what a PMP is, and it really doesn't matter what the industry is. The RCDD, I feel like definitely has grown over the years in terms of visibility, but how do you feel about that? Do you think now that the RCDD is very broadly known, or do you still think it's kind of a niche, industry type of a credential?
Right. Well, first off, Jim Martin, what a great guy. And he's absolutely great. Very knowledgeable, lots of history, lots of knowledge. Great guy. For as far as,
by the way, if he still lives in that house in Waynesville, I was the first person to use the restroom in that house. just letting you know, helped him move, and I was the first one to use it. So
there you go. So when you compare the RCD to other credentials, like you mentioned, the PMP applies to many industries, right? If you're making widgets in Walla Walla, Washington, a project manager with a PMP certification can track that. If you're building a new building in the construction industry, a project management professional can track that. If you're doing a structured cable job, a PMP can track that. So the PMP reaches across industries. The RCDD is specific to the information communication technology industry, right? So again, for those who may not remember, RCD is a registered communications distribution designer. It is a design credential, but don't think about just getting your RCD if only going to be doing design work. I know people who get their RCDDs and they go into sales, because who better to trust than somebody who knows what they're talking about? Right. I know RCDDs who go into training to help grow the next group of technicians or quality. Right? It's not just, I know RCDs who become obviously estimators to do design work. So it is a design certification, but it can help you no matter what career path you really, really want to go. Now, with that being said, the RC program is still well known. It depends on which part of the industry you're talking about, right? If you're doing small jobs where you're doing cabling at a veterinary office, well, the vet is probably not going to know what an RCDD is. Okay, I get that. But when you start getting to your more complex, your higher customers, they're not only going to know what that is, they're going to put in their contract documents that you have to have an RCDD on staff, that you have to have Bixie certified installation people on staff. You have to follow the current standards and the Bixie best practices. So I think in the industry, it's very well known in the U.S., and I think it's growing outside of the U.S. as well, too. I just had a guy on my show, maybe 4 weeks ago. I met him at a Bixie conference. There's your networking thing. I didn't know him before. He saw me at a Bixie conference, and he knew me through the podcast, and he came up and introduced himself to me. Oh, by the way, if you ever see me at any kind of a conference or whatever, please come up to me and say hi. I love talking to people at conferences. Just don't ask me to remember your name, because remember earlier I told you I have a bad memory? That goes with people's names too. I'm horrible about remembering people's names. And as an instructor, I've taught 20,000 people over the last 12 years.
Right.
I don't remember everybody's name. I just don't. Like, I can't, right?
Yeah.
So he came on the show because he's from Saudi Arabia, and he created a Big C authorized training facility, and we wanted to talk about that on the show. And we also wanted to talk about how to increase the awareness of the RCD credential in Saudi Arabia. Now, it's already there, but it's not as well known as it is in the U.S. And it's funny because one of the main takeaways that I got from that show, and this is one of the things I love about doing my podcast, is, here I am, I'm talking about RCDD and the challenges we face every single day as RCDDs and the questions that we get, how does a company pay for it, make sure the person who got that RCD doesn't leave and all that stuff. He had the exact same questions. The exact same questions I dealt with day in and day out. So there's a lot of shared growth there, but just because we're a world apart, the world has a vested interest in dividing us. We all put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time. So there's a lot of interest.
We're way more the same than we realize.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's always room to grow. And especially when you start talking about the rising demand, I talked about this earlier, smart buildings, the rising demand for that's going to really drive people who have the design and the knowledge and the skill sets that are in the RCD expertise. And, the other thing too is, because of this, make sure when you start trying to align yourself, if you want to elevate your business to the next level, get away from that office, you want to start talking to engineering firms, architectural firms, and people like that. They function at a higher level, and they're going to want that RCDD professional, because they know that RCD professional can make sure that they design a competent design, that it's going to be a complete design, and it's going to get their money's worth. And that's the real critical things there that you really need. That all that stuff ties together. It amazes me that not everybody knows the RCD. When I teach every class, because I teach a lot of classes virtually, I always ask them, who is going to get the RCDD? And every once in a while, like once every other class, I have somebody come back and say, what's an RCDD? What's a Big C? So there's still room to grow, but I think it is every year it gets more and more and more.
And kudos to those who come back and ask the question. That's always a good sign.
Absolutely.
Too, right?
The only stupid question is one left unasked.
There you go. Well, on that note, let's ask another one. You mentioned during rehearsal, you're kind of lamenting the fact that you feel towards the end of your career, yet things are just escalating in terms of technology and capabilities. And there's so many exciting things going on, in the structured industries, specifically. What do you think over the next 10 years are going to be potentially the big advancements that everybody will be talking about?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I'm a boomer. But it depends on which information you go by, because some people say up to 64, and some people say the millennials start at 64. I was born in 64, so I really consider myself a millennial, not necessarily a boomer, because I'm an early adopter of information and stuff like that. And even though I'm getting close to the end of my career, it does make me sad, because there's so much cool stuff coming down the pike. And so, we've already talked about the stuff with POE and smart buildings. What's the next logical step? Smart cities. Smart cities, where cities can start communicating with all the smart buildings. And so that way they can, California would really, really benefit from this. When you start talking about the brownouts and stuff, the issues they have with their power, if they had smart buildings that were talking together as a smart city, they could talk to the power distribution, that would help everybody. And the next logical step from that would obviously be, maybe smart states, smart countries, where again, all this kind of comes together. So hyper-connected environments, it's just going to grow. I mean, when I first got in the industry 40 years ago, the network consisted of running, two conductor cabling to MBI computers, or if you did the old Mac thing, but now everything's connected on. Especially when you roll in AI, artificial intelligence, for those who may not know what that acronym means. My first exposure to AI happened over 30 years ago when I had a Commodore 64. sitting in the basement of my house at the time, and I was connected to the internet through AOL with a dial-up.
Yeah.
Right? There's an AI program called Eliza. Now, it was very rudimentary, but you could ask it questions, and it would answer questions, and it was very rudimentary. But now, when you look at AI, I mean, Samsung has come out with a wireless phone that's AI driven, right? I use AI every day in my podcast. I use it for creating show descriptions, hashtags, questions, coming up with content ideas and stuff like that. Everything. And even going beyond that, you can use AI to create graphics and pictures, and there's all kinds of cool stuff that AI is going to help. And that's going to drive the networks. And now, AI will never replace the cable installer out in the field, but it will affect maybe how that tester they're using works. It will affect the project manager because it's going to help them maybe automate some rudimentary process they got to go through every week, like, troubling their financial reports to know if they're over or under budget, stuff like that. It's going to help the estimator, right? Help people do design. So AI's here, and it's really, really going to help impact. When it comes to AI, some people super fear AI, and some people embrace AI. And I think I'm kind of in the middle of the road there. I think AI can certainly help us a lot, but if it's putting it in the wrong hands, I just had to sit through a mandatory class for work. We go through these cyber trainings every once in a while where they talk about how to watch out for email phishing and all that other stuff, so that way we don't create any problems on the company network. And I just had to do one just the other day. The nefarious element of people have now found a way to make QR codes breach networks. So what's the next step? Why don't they use AI to breach networks? So in the right hand, it's going to help us grow, and wrong, it can't. And then, another thing I see happening too is, as the company I work for my day job, we have a big green and sustainable practice. We have a big green initiative, and lots of companies do that. And I'm no tree hugger by any stretch of the imagination, but I have learned from having my own homestead, my own farm here, that some of the decisions I make on my property have helped me grow stuff, and also have not helped me grow stuff. But for kind of example, when I first started getting into homesteading and growing plants, I wanted the plants, as far away from the house as I can get it. Well, you don't want to do that with tomato plants, because tomato plants, you got to have eyes on them every single day, because there's a thing called hornworms. And if you don't look for them every day, they will devastate your tomato plants literally in 24 hours. Right? So, and then same thing, with our trash. When we get done eating and stuff like that, that leftover food or whatever we're doing, that goes to the compost pile, creates soil. Right? So there are things that we can do. So when you look at it from a manufacturer's perspective, they're going to be looking at new types of materials for the dielectric around the conductors or the jacketing. And that's going to affect the installation practices. How do you pull the cable? What's the bend radiuses? What's the maximum pulling tensions? Because it's a different type of material. That's going to affect the estimators, because they got to know that stuff. That's got to affect the customer. So all this stuff kind of really ties together. And then you can't leave out, upskilling. Upskilling is going to be extremely essential, because, I know I said it in the last one. I don't remember if I said it in this one yet, but our industry moves at the speed of light. And if you don't keep up, you're going to get left behind, right? Because we used to put in POTS cabling, and POTS cabling, the way you install that is different than you install, Cat 6A cable. You could staple POTS cabling as long as you didn't run the staple through the cable.
Right.
But if you staple a high performance data cable, it's going to crush the jacket. That's going to change the pair geometry inside the jacket, and that's going to cause interference. So, but what skills are you going to need to know for Cat 9 cable? Cat 9's not here yet. I'm hypothetically Cat 9. That's a logical step, because we went from POTS cabling to Cat 3 to Cat 4 for 2 weeks to Cat 5 to Cat 5E to Cat 6 to Cat 6A. You go to the ISO standard, they got Cat 7, Cat 7A, and then back to the ISO standard and the ANSI standard, you got Cat 8. Well, Cat 9 is going to be the logical step. How does that get installed? If you're not willing to upskill, you're going to get left behind.
No, absolutely. And like you mentioned, the AI, is it good? Is it bad? I think everything has two sides to a coin. I think there's going to be positive and negative with it. We talked earlier in rehearsal, we both use, as content creators, we both use different AI tools along with a lot of similar tools, that we actually use to publish the content. And it saves me hours, to have it provide me a video description, hashtags. I can go in and clean it up and personalize it, make it the way I want. But, when I first started doing that, that was 2-3 hours of work, for every episode, that now it just, auto transcription, I pop it into ChatGPT, it knows what I like. It just saves so much time. So, I think, an example I would use here is, remember when AutoCAD first became the thing and not blueprints, and there was a whole change that was going on there, kind of in the 90s is when I remember that. And, AutoCAD didn't replace the architect, engineers, consultants, but it did replace those who refused to learn how to use a computer. So,
Yes.
do not be entrenched and dug in and say, well, I'm going to do the extra hours of work every week and be inefficient because I don't want AI to take my job. You're actually taking your own job, in my view.
Yep.
When you do
Absolutely. That. Absolutely. And, you talked about our industry, number one, it surprises me because we work in a very technology driven industry. Again, I've taught over 20,000 students in the last decade. And a lot of times when I'm teaching face-to-face class, they got to come up to my computer to sign in. Almost every single one of them is the one-finger typist typing in, because they don't not good technology, which kind of drives me crazy. You're in a technology industry. You should at least know the home row, right? At least know the home row. And that's going to help you out so much if you can understand that you got to be early adopter of information and do that and move forward, because you will get left behind.
Yeah, this world will leave you behind if you don't keep up. Never get ahead like that. So, well, Chuck, thank you so much for doing 2 episodes with me today. We only recorded one. We only picked the winner, but like I mentioned before, we have a lot of security professionals in my audience, and I think many would be interested in following you and help you grow your audience. So, if you could tell everybody how to find you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. If you can't find me, you're not looking hard enough. That's all I got to say. I'm pretty easy to find. I am on all the platforms. I'm on Clapper, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, audio podcast platforms. The easiest way to find me is open up the old Google machine, type in hashtag, that's a pound sign for us old boomers, hashtag CB as in Chuck Bowser, CB RCDD. It'll pull me up. Or you can always go to letstalkcabling.com and go there and branch out to all the different methods as well too. So I put out content, whether you like long form content or short form content. I put out a little bit of everything, and my goal is to educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of people in the ICT industry. And over the last 4 years, I think I've made some good progress in doing that. And I'm going to keep on going until, I got 40 plus years of experience in this head that I want to get out of my head and get to everybody else, so I can learn some skills for my retirement, like how to sail a boat.
There you go.
How to ride a motorcycle across country.
Those are worthy endeavors there.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, Chuck, again, thanks so much for coming on. Very important to me. And actually, I know you don't mention your day job, but that day job is a product that I've been a customer of for many, many years and a big fan of. And I think I've got a couple certificates with your name on it as my trainer. So
nice.
Really honored to have you come on, and really honored to kind of, help again with the low voltage approach here, trying to help these different industries learn each other better. So Really appreciate your insight. And for the rest of you, we have more great episodes coming. So we'll have another episode of 49 Volts out to you next week. Until then, thanks so much.
Take care, everybody.